The guy tells him to protect the princess at any cost and not let the enemies pass. The man says that the situation is getting worse and they need to retreat temporarily. Arima Seto smiles. The wolves growl. The young man says, "Just think, they have nowhere else to retreat to," and says that this. Arima Seto looks at a book with an image of an eye and wings floating above his palm. He says that we need to spread the fire. A guy, a man, and a guy say they're done for. Arima Seto reveals that he uses an advanced fire magic called Infinite Circle. A carriage drawn by two horses is racing down the road, with wolves running around it and fire blazing around the edges. He, a girl, and a man are watching what is happening. Arima Seto asks what they're staring at. The man explains that he's somehow connected to the rebels. The guy tells him to forget about it and give him his secret potion, explaining that its healing effect is stronger than those useless high-class potions. The sound of a blow or sudden movement is heard, accompanied by sparks. The boy says his severed arm healed in seconds, and the man says it's an amazing power. The man calls the princess. The princess thanks the mage and says that thanks to him, they were able to avoid a difficult situation. The princess explains that she should thank the mage Arima Seto, and he replies that she should leave a note of gratitude. The man says the magician is arrogant, and why the hell would he do that? Then he asks the princess to listen to him. Two knights inform him that, despite being their savior, they cannot endanger the princess. One of the knights expresses surprise, thinking of him as an arrogant mage. The man grabs the princess by the hand and tells her to leave immediately. The guy says that he will drive the carriage and the girl should follow him. Arima Seto asks them to wait for the night and tells them to head west. There they'll encounter that pompous guild of night heroes. People like them are only smart enough to help. Then he threatens the guard that if he ignores him, he'll die. Finally, he says that if he understood, then he should tell the grumpy old man. He says he's an arrogant magician. The princess looks sadly from the carriage. The girl asks why everyone was wary of that man. He doesn't seem bad. The man explains it's because he's a villain with a bad reputation. The girl reveals his name is Lobelia Crowley and calls him an arrogant magician. Arima Seto reports that despite being educated at a top magic academy, he used his immense power for personal gain and injured people, and also says how many people lost their homes and how many lost their lives. The man says he truly deserves the name of the devil and warns never to mess with him. The princess then explains that the one being pursued didn't need any reason to save her and asks why he did it. The man explains that he can't fathom the thoughts of those insane who study dark magic. The girl says that she did not feel any evil intent from that man, as from her father, who was killed for tyranny, and at the same time reports that he, without expecting a reward, said something. The mage says they need to do something to save time. A guard knocks on the carriage door and says that if they explain the situation, they might be able to help, and that it's better than running away. He has a proposition for her. The man says they're talking about a legendary order of knights and that they really can help. The young man asks if they're coming. The young man says he can't say it was someone else's advice. The guard says that when he called them, he already thought he would kill them, but if he hadn't come, they would have died. He explains that even with swords pointed at him, he was worried about their safety. The magician says that maybe he's not as bad as he thinks. The young man says hello and announces that he is Seto Arima. The guy says he was a 23-year-old part-time worker and says he played games but never thought he would end up in one of them. He reports that it just so happened that he was reborn as the most vile villain. In the classic RPG Arcadia Fantasia, a popular mobile game has always been at the top of user ratings. The story follows a hero blessed by the daring fire who saves the world with his beloved. The hero's official name is Reynard, a young man chosen as a hero in a ritual. He reveals that he is the reincarnation of history's most hated villain, Lobelia Crowley, who sits among the 12 most powerful in the world and seeks forbidden magic known as dark magic. From Lobelius's diary, we can conclude that he has fully mastered dark magic. He says the problem is that he's forced to speak in that tone and explains why he became that character. He then reveals that the character dies at the end. He reasons that if he's Lobelia's reincarnation, then that character's death means his own death and says that's bad. His character is the most tragic, but in reality, he's loved more than the others, and the reason lies in his past. The man talks about trends, among which Lobelia ranks first, Arcadia second, and New Mario third. He reports that the great war between humans and demons is a war between the Demon King's army and the human army. Lobelia was born in a village on the border with the conflict zone. He lived with his sick father and younger sister Eru, and these three did not know any troubles despite their poverty. The guy says he couldn't find a job again today. He doesn't want to steal anymore, but they can't live without money. He says that he already made excuses that he worked in a stall and decides to say that he helped in the field and also asks what to tell Dad. The boy notices something and expresses surprise. He says that Lobelia, having understood the cruelty of life and the suffering of people, cannot abandon the fallen demon. He shared the little food that was lying around the house. The demon says that he will never forget this kindness and would never have thought that among people there would be those who would be kind to him, a demon. He wishes them good luck and fortune. The guy says he's glad he met him and reports that Lobelia really thought so back then. It is reported that he did not know that the army of demons that came for their own sold children and women to merchants, the same people, into slavery. The man reports that the men were killed. The girl explains that the children and women were sold to merchants, the same people, into slavery. He says he can't believe it happened. The boys are in captivity, with shackles on their legs. He says he keeps hearing screams and has a headache. The young man says it's all his fault and he's incapable of good things. He says the days he spent in a cold cage, tormented by guilt, were like hell. A man reports that it appears one of the slaves has escaped. He says he was told to change the old handcuffs and calls the man an idiot. The man says he couldn't run far, and the guy says he'll take off running and follow him. The man says, "Oh, the guy's hitting the wall." The man asks if the guy is lost, then explains that the iron on his leg belongs to a slave. The man expresses regret and explains that it must have been fate that brought them together. The boy says that he wants the boy to be his son and addresses him by calling him. The guy asks who? A son? The Crowley family, aristocrats who couldn't have children, adopted Lobelia. To become the next head of the family, he received an elite education, and at the age of 12 he began attending a magic academy. Lobelia's scores were outstanding. Day by day his cruelty grew, and his broken heart, having seen hell, could not be restored. He visited the library a lot. Lobelia says he did it and made it far. Another guy says there's something more important than ratings and scores. The man says his sense of morality and corrupted personality, hurting everyone around him without a second thought, haven't changed one bit, and declares to Arima Seto that he's no longer his son. Below, it stated that even Crowley's affectionate family couldn't allow the problems to continue. The boy reveals that after his father disowned him, Lobelia fell into despair. He explains that, in order to destroy the world that continued to betray him, Lobelia sank so low that he turned to dark magic. He became cruel and evil. The young man says he's Reynard and has come to rescue him on behalf of the hero. Lobelia asks who he is. Against an entire guild known as the Hero Knights, Lobelia fought alone for 4 days and nights. The guy says that the enemy can't win alone and should accept defeat as a chance to reconsider their choices, and also explains the strength of their friendship and that he can still improve. Lobelia sits in shock. He reports that he was tormented by unprecedented humiliation. The guy says he'll never understand this pathetic trash and asks about the power of friendship. He says that he is sending him to the abyss of hell and making this rat suffer from hopelessness. Lobelia grew stronger and fought Reynard over and over again in the hope of surpassing him, but he never won, and by then the number of his defeats had become too absurd to count. He joined the Demon King's army, which destroyed his home. He explains that here, too, he was betrayed again, the Demon King's minions casting a laxative spell on him. This led to a decisive duel with the hero who came to destroy the demon army. He persistently entered into combat with the enemy. Lobelia died in a fierce battle. Arima Seto says that if this isn't a tragedy, then what else can you call it? After his death, Lobelius's past was revealed, and he won the hearts of even those who initially despised him. Arima Seto reports that the characters in the story refused to find the truth about how he became a villain, but from the hero Reynard's perspective, he was absolutely evil. The young man says the memories of the winner have surfaced in his head once again, and reports that he died alone in a life filled with betrayal. He says that as long as he is a character, he cannot deviate from the plot, then there is only one path left for him. The young man reports that the matter is decided and the next member of the Knightly Order of Heroes. A sign showing a knife and fork is shown. Arima Seto reads the paper thoughtfully. The man says that this is all to order, right? Arima Seto looks at him condescendingly. The guy says yes. The innkeeper asks him to take his time. Arima Seto reports that the innkeeper was clearly afraid of him and at least didn't throw him out. The man reports that since his reincarnation, wherever he goes, there are those who stare at him, those who shudder in fear, and those with a strange glint in their eyes. The guy says the only way to avoid such treatment is to clear his bad reputation, and if this is a game, he's sure there was an event somewhere in here where you could defeat the Dragon King. If I remember correctly, there should be an event where the player defeats the Dragon King, And if I defeat him, people might see him differently. This is a plan to free people from the rule of the Dragon King Boros. The guy says he knows about Lobelia's bad reputation as an arrogant mage and offers to share a good story, asking if he would like to work with him. Arimaseto says he's not interested, and the man says it's not cool. The girl explains that she sees the hero's knight in the distance. The guy says she has a strong sense of justice for both commoners and knights, and asks if she's the one who hates Lobelia the most. The man takes the glass and says it's annoying, asking if he was being washed at the entrance to the city. The man suddenly poured the glass at Arima. The guy with the headband says that if he catches Arimaseto here, he'll wonder how much he'll get. Arimaseto explains that this is the perfect opportunity, which he'll take advantage of, and at that moment one of the men stabs him. Arimaseto says they want to hand him over to the knights. Arimaseto says that with a body like that, punches don't hurt, but getting punched is still annoying. Then he says that the girl noticed. Arimaseto uses wind magic, shock. The guy says he just wanted to relax, but ended up causing trouble, and says he'll leave before things get worse. The men discuss the fight, ask who he is, and note that they immediately left. The guy decides to find another place to eat. The woman says he attacked adventurers and isn't the kind of person she'll just let go of. He objects. The woman asks what he's up to. The young man explains that he simply wanted to eat, and when he was interrupted, he responded with a blow, adding that even if he says he's a victim, a girl like her definitely won't believe him. The girl doesn't believe him. He says that approaching him with unproven information and unwavering convictions once again demonstrates the level of preparation of the knight's heroes. The girl says she's too busy to waste time arguing with the enemy. The young man says it was close and he was sure she would draw her sword. He then says he seems to have angered her and needs to do something about his sharp tongue. A woman and a boy sit with their arms crossed. Sounds of movement can be heard. The young man says it's awkward. The girl remains silent, crossing her arms. The woman asks why he's on this carriage. The man in the hat explains that the passengers to Kansas are either affiliated with or have dealings with the Dragon King, and admits that this is indeed unusual. Arimaseto says he intends to defeat the Dragon King. The woman says that if she doesn't win, there's no point, and declares that it's her mission. The young man remains silent. The man in the hat says he doesn't want to interrupt, but the man on the horse says it seems they're going no further. Arimaseto informs him that he will go on his own from here. He explains that the stones can be destroyed with magic, but the Dragon King's lair is close, and if he uses too much magic, his location will be revealed. A guy jumps off a rock. The rock cracks. The guy lands. A girl watches him. He says it would be better if she returned. The woman says this is her hometown and she doesn't need his criticism. The woman explains that he's lying about defeating the Dragon King and asks if he's thinking of defeating her and joining his side. The guy says he's leaving. The girl screams at him to wait and falls down. The guy calls her stupid. He helps the girl up, telling her that she needs to stand up. The girl gratefully takes his hand. Then they end up on the ground next to each other. The young man says he needs to be more careful next time and chuckles. The girl apologizes. The girl apologizes. He remains silent. The guy says she sprained her ankle and explains that she needs an ointment for that. If she mixes his herbs, she can make an ointment, and since it's already getting dark, she needs to get ready for the night. Arimaseto informs her that her leg will be healed by morning. The girl remains silent. Arimaseto tells her to breathe as long as she can, and he will be on guard. The woman says it's strange and reports that she knew him as a man without a shred of humanity or empathy. He says that he is like that now, and if the girl were like that, she would leave him. The girl asks what he will do after defeating the Dragon King. He explains that this is only to test his strength. He has no business with her house. The girl asks this to surpass Reynard, and the young man says to think whatever you want. He says that if you think about it, in the original story she worked with the Dragon Knight Zek to defeat the king, and asks if the plot has changed, since Clavdia was supposed to appear as a minor character. The man asks Clavdia why she came here on her own. The woman says it's to end her own life, that she can't involve the Knight's Order in her personal affairs, and that she shouldn't explain this to Arimaseto. The guy explains that this means Claudia has a history that wasn't mentioned in the plot. He explains that she couldn't win. Arimaseto says that if a girl wants to free her land, let her do it herself, but don't get in the way. A woman tells a guy that his mouth is dirty and orders him to go to bed. The guy thanks her. The woman notices that the guy is talking in his sleep. Arimaseto reports that he was truly thanked. Birds fly across the sky and cry out. The text announces that they are finally heading to the lands of Kansas, to the Dragon Boros. He reports that this is Kansas territory. The top right fragment states that even the former knight's fortress could become lifeless under the control of the Dragon King Boros. The bottom right fragment states that the village of Glinta is obliged to sacrifice to the king once a year, and today is the very day when the king's thugs are sure to improve there. He says he doesn't need orders. The woman says that when the sun sets, there will be even more of them, and it will be better to wait until the morning and a convenient opportunity. The young man listens. He says there are too many people around that house. Then he says, A young man uses magic to contain an explosion. A young woman in the center expresses shock, and two men on the right hold her hands. The young woman screams for her mom and dad, while the woman and young man react with surprise. The girl says she doesn't understand something. He asks if they know each other. Two men say that the idiot should not have tried to free the victim and that it would have been better to give the daughter away quietly. The girl is crying and sobbing. The woman looks away with a tense expression on her face. The woman runs away. Arima Seto shouts at her to stop. Arima Seto says that the words about recklessness aren't hers. The man draws his bow. The guy explains who the woman is, and the man asks where she even came from. The girl jumps forward with a sword, preparing to attack. Arima Seto strikes with his sword. A girl nearby shields herself from the attack, and two horned men watch in alarm. The girl cries and says she can't believe this is happening. The young man says Claudia, and Claudia tells Toto. The girl says she's sorry for being so late. The guy says the victim's escape would cause problems and warns the girl will be held accountable. He says they need to find a safe place to talk. The girl explains that she believes she killed his invaluable subordinates and orders them to leave. The guy throws a punch. The girl deflects it with her shield and says he's too slow and can't stop me. The girl says she will abolish all rotten systems involving sacrifices. The man responds briefly, expressing surprise. The guy says the girl seems to be full of strength. The girl strikes him and says she has no weak points. The elf says it's exciting and invigorating to cross his path with such limited skill. Arima Seto says that's impossible and that it's not in that place. A boy strikes a man with horns, who is wounded in the face. The man with the mask is also wounded in the head. Lobelia calls Arima Seto by name. The boy looks at his hand, which is emitting magical energy. He says that if the goal is to die pointlessly, he doesn't mind, but then he'll defeat the king himself. And the girl says that this is her fight. The girl says, ugh, and he explains that she can sit here doing nothing. The young man announces that they will invade the Dragon King's castle. The girl says she helped the girl's parents earlier. The young man tells them to go faster. The girl asks what he said. The young man explains that they killed the subordinates and won't have to wait for a more serious attack. He informs that a king lives in this castle and explains that he sits on the throne. A woman speaks of a divine exclamation. A young man reports that it seems one of his important subordinates has died. The guy asks, as expected, the Lord Dragon King already knows everything. He reports that it can be said, subordinates, his eyes. The young man explains that Kansas is convenient, the nature is rich, there are no girls dressed up unnecessarily, and the castle is good. He explains that they need to make sure the threat is eliminated at any cost. The man confirms that he understands. The young man explains that he sent some servants to the village and that the one who killed. The guy says something unintelligible and then yells, "What's going on?" He says it's a trifle. He reports that he wasted his time on such a trifle. The man exclaims that this is ridiculous and asks if they defeated everyone. The man flinches and makes a sound. Then a building balcony appears. The young man is silent and the girl asks what's wrong, to which he replies that nothing is wrong. The guy reports that the enemies have proven to be problematic and offers to explain the situation. He says that's enough and that the guy should have figured it out by now, and also explains that he looks worried. The young man says he guided the man, the sole survivor of his clan's destruction, and trusted him more than anyone else. The man says, the young man explains that betraying such trust, the guy apologizes sincerely and asks for forgiveness. He says that he is disappointed. The woman with horns announces that these are her guests. The man on the throne says that the guests' manners are not the best, but welcomes them. The boy and girl destroy the door. He says that he is not going to give up and says that he will fight until the end. The young man announces that he and the girl have finally met face to face. The woman reports that a strong wind has started blowing in the castle. He explains that this is a harbinger of an approaching storm. Boros reveals his name is Boros and that he can be called the Dragon King Boros. He explains that he has unfortunately just lost a great subordinate and offers to become his servant, explaining that he has always desired a powerful mage. The young man declines, and the girl says he was heartless. Elf explains that he wants to ask why he's challenging him, and he says if he plans to control Kansas for him. A young man says he's here to liberate Kansas. The man explains that this is problematic. The boy says it's best to stop this futile fight. The man explains that even a fool like the boy should understand this. The man with horns explains that he's a dragon, and an equal, a fair fight is impossible. The character with horns says that this is true. He and the girl prepare to attack. He announces that he will begin. Arima Seto reports that a single swing can wield such power. A man with long hair and horns points a weapon at Arima Seto. Arima Seto retreats. The elf says that it seems the interlocutor is stronger than the rest of the people and asks what he said. The guy explains that the weak bark the loudest. He stops the blade with his hand. The man with sharp ears and fangs says that it can't be. The young man announces that this is the most powerful sword in the world and that it is. The woman makes a sound of surprise as the sword pierces her head. The woman says it's not nice and that she was planning to wait and caress him later. The guy says, shouldn't he die? He says, oh, oh. The girl says she's going to kill the man. The man explains that it seems she wants to die right now. The young man says things are bad. He uses wind magic, striking the girl, who flies back and hits the wall, making a thumping sound and a groan. Then the girl lowers her head. He says he forgot that she is lighter than him and that this is too much. The woman reports that he used wind magic to avoid her attack. The young man says he's impressive and asks if he might be a famous mage. The woman explains that it's a rare spellbook, not all high-ranking mages have one, and that the cover looks a bit ominous. He strikes with his sword. He deflects multiple arrows with his shield. The man with the bow steps back, watching Arima. The arrows continue to fly and explode upon hitting the shield. The young man reacts to the blow, and the woman delivers a powerful blow with her sword, causing a large explosion. Arima Sato delivers a series of sword strikes, creating vortexes of air that deflect the opponent's attack. The opponent retreats, and Arima Sato prepares for the next move, jumping up and covering himself with his hand. The guy says it's an ominous chain. The man explains it's a trick, and the chains wrap around his arms. Arima Sato says, what power will there be if this continues? The elf breaks the chains and smiles. The elf stands with his staff and looks at the whirlwind in the sky, and Arima Sato raises his hand. The boy casts the Death Thunder spell and releases a powerful bolt of lightning downwards. The demoness watches the scene unfold. The lightning strikes the ground with a roar, causing a powerful explosion and discharges. Arima Sato states that he can't afford to lose, and explains that if he loses, it will all be over. The guy reports that he seems to have finally broken down. Arima Sato tells the girl to pull herself together, and the girl says that she hasn't woken up yet. The guy says no one has ever crushed him this hard. The man explains that he didn't crush him. The guy says he's still alive. Arima Sato reports that Boros definitely has the same. The young man says he feels like he needs to get serious. The dragon acknowledges that the young man is strong and says he has a second form. The boy says he has no intention of losing to someone like the dragon, and says he knows what they call someone who is great in body but small in spirit. The dragon explains that no warrior has ever brought him to this form in the last 500 years, but even a mage with a grimoire can't compare to him. The young man says it's small fry. The dragon says that it seems that the interlocutor still allows himself the luxury of talking nonsense. The guy says he wonders how long this will last. He then uses a spell called catastrophe, causing whirlwinds to form around him while the dragon slams its paw into the ground. The young man asks if it's worth pursuing further. He says he's not the same as he used to be. The girl says the name Claudia and repeats the name Dia. A woman tells you to put the book away when you sit down at the table, but Arima Sato tells you it's still the same book. The man explains it's his inspiration. The girl asks if it's okay to go for a walk after eating. The woman replies that it's okay, but only carefully. The girl says that when she was little, she loved the story of a certain female knight who wielded the holy sword Rai-Shalam and always wanted to save innocent people like her. She explains that she honed her skills in her own way in the village, and her parents fully supported her dream, the boy says. The girl says Monica's team of explorers is heading into the forest. The woman says she just got scolded by her mom and dad. The woman says Monica never learns. Monica explains that it's okay, because Claudia will defeat all the monsters that appear. The woman says Monica acts like a child. Monica asks how that works. Claudia says that means she's the oldest, Monica explains. The girl says that in order to become a knight, she will have to leave the village, but the girl says she doesn't want to be left without them. Then the nightmare began. The Demon King took control of the village. It is reported that the castle of the knight heroes in the forest became the fortress of the Dragon King. All property was taken, those who resisted were killed, and then the sacrifice of young girls was demanded. The inscription says that Monica was the first of them. Monica asks to remember that she will quickly get rid of them. The girl asks to let her go and says that she's in pain. The girl says that Claudia is strong. He says that the sword broke and explains that it happened because he hit it too hard. The woman reports that, in preparation for his arrival, they dug a hole under the floor, allowing him to escape without being caught by the king's subordinates. The girl says she doesn't want to and suggests they escape together. The young man explains that only a child can fit through the hole. The woman explains that the most important thing to her is the girl's life. Then the nightmare began. The Demon King took control of the village. It is reported that the knight's heroic castle in the forest became the Dragon King's fortress. All property was confiscated, and those who resisted were killed. It is also said that this did not end there, and the sacrifice of young girls was demanded. The neutral girl reports that Monica was the first one. Monica explains that she will quickly get rid of them and asks her to remember this. The white-haired girl tells Monica that it hurts and demands that she let her go. The girl says that Claudia is strong. The man says the sword is broken and explains that he can no longer fight with such a weapon. The woman says that in preparation for their arrival, they dug a hole under the floor where they could escape without being caught by the king's subordinates. The girl says she doesn't want to and suggests they escape together. The boy explains that only a child can fit through the hole. The woman explains that the most important thing for them is life. The girl says that for as long as she can remember, she's admired the knight and her holy sword. The girl says she left everyone behind, her family, her friends, the entire village. The woman says she is just a coward. Arima Sato asks Claudia if she's awake yet. Claudia says, ugh, then calls Lobelia. The girl explains it's a magical barrier and asks if it's been working all this time. The boy says that she was sure that even knowing she wouldn't win, she had to fight the dragon alone, because running away wouldn't be true redemption, and true redemption is defeating Boros and restoring peace to the village. The dragon says that she praises Arima Sato for that. The dragon announces that it is time to put an end to this, and the final ritual, the dragon tear, begins. He says this. A girl runs toward a dragon with a sword in her hands. A young man looks at the dragon, holding a glowing ball in his hand. The dragon opens its mouth. The young man says, "It's Claudia." The dragon asks in surprise. Monica screams, "Daddy, Mommy, Monica," and asks for strength. Monica raises her sword above her head, preparing to attack the creature in front of her. The girl screams that they will defeat the dragon and strikes its head with her sword. Then the dragon screams. The girl continues to attack the dragon. Arima Sato picks up Lobelia. Lobelia tells him there's not much time left. Arima Sato says he knows. Arima Sato asks Lobelia to be quiet and watch. The dragon says no and explains that, as expected, he's getting a little tired. The guy explains that the reason the dragon was feared most was because of its incredible power to restore blood. Arima Sato says that to defeat Boros, only an attack with destructive power and mana superior to his healing ability will work, and he must be finished off in one blow. Arima Sato then opens the book and casts a spell, calling upon the Gate of Fear. The dragon informs the raging imaginary beasts, thirsty for blood and flesh, that he is giving them an offering. The boy says that the dragon's reign is over. The man reports that these are the illusory gates of hell. The dragon makes a sound of surprise, then tries to break free from its chains, emitting intermittent cries. At that moment, the door closes with a loud thud. Arima Sato says he doesn't know where this door leads. The girl says she has no idea either. A man says he knew about the roaring and the anomaly in the sky. Another man talks about black magic. A woman calls it terrible and asks if this means he's an arrogant magician. Another man says their deaths are not far away. The boy and girl stand silently next to each other. The boy, Arima Sato, tells HMF that returning to the village was a waste of time. The woman yells at them to shame themselves, idiots. The man and girl react with fear to her words. The woman says the first thing they hear is gratitude and rudeness, and that he freed them from tyranny. The woman says that she alone couldn't defeat the Dragon King, but the man doesn't care. The girl hugs the woman and says something incomprehensible. The girl apologizes to the woman and explains. Arima Sato speaks to Lobelia. Lobelia wipes away her tears and thanks him. The man and woman, along with another man, thank the mage, expressing their deep appreciation. The guy says, "Thank you." Arima Sato says that he cannot allow himself to be weak because weakness is a sin. A few days later, the guy reports that this is the headquarters of the Knights Guild. The girl says that this letter is for Mr. Reynard. He asks if it is from Claudia. He says that the one who defeated the Dragon King is Lobelia. The woman says it seems Mr. Lobelia saved someone again. The woman calls him Mr. Lobelia. The man and woman at the table say Mr. Lobelia is amazing. The girl says Mr. Lobelia is amazing. He reveals that when he arrives in the next country, his first plan will be to help those in need to restore his reputation. But thanks to Lobelius's notoriety and sharp tongue, even starting a conversation is difficult. He explains that he has been rejected many times despite offers of help, and the man The girl says she's cold. She says she's hungry and asks for help. The guy thinks it's a great opportunity. The girl snuggles up to Arima Seto. The woman offers dried meat. Arima Seto says he doesn't recognize the character, but he's willing to accept the beast-like creature's favor. The woman says it was delicious and sighs. Arima Seto asks her name, and the woman laughs and says he'll be surprised. Radia Kaitsith reveals that she is the daughter of the chieftain of the Beastmen tribe. She also reveals her name. Arima Seto says he can't afford to relax, because if he does, he'll die. The guy announces that they're leaving. Rydia yells out where he's going. The text explains that Rydia is the daughter of the Beastmen tribe's chieftain, Razi Kaitasit, and that she's a selfish woman who fled her father's strict restrictions and the tribe's rules. Rydia is indignant. He says, "Wait, Mew." He explains that the game only revealed her name, and there's no obligation or benefit to helping her. He explains that if he goes any further, not only will he be unable to clear his name, but he'll also be considered an ally of the other villains. The girl says that as soon as she became, the girl asks Arima Seto to reward her for saving her, explaining that she wants to become his wife. The young man refuses. The girl says she's fallen in love with her and asks if it's an honor, but Arima Seto doesn't think so. The girl asks him to look at her large breasts, but Arima Seto tells her to go home, calling her a stupid cat. The girl says that even though she's a pet, the young man comments on how insistent this sounds. The young man shouts that he has no time for those who brought trouble upon themselves and demands that it be enough already. The girl quietly says, "Naya." The girl is lying on the ground. He says it's a fever, which is natural for a fugitive without a plan, and tells her what a problematic situation it is. The young man reports that the smell of food woke her up. The girl with the ears happily says the food is ready. The young man offers to eat it before it gets cold. The girl thanks him and tries the food. He says he's eating porridge with eggs. The girl says it's so delicious. He explains that he doesn't care about the little rat, and that if the fever has gone down, he needs to hurry home. The girl replies that she doesn't want to leave because she has to meet someone. He asks. Rachel announces that she's learning magic at a place called Anoa. A girl with ears and a tail smiles, and Rachel holds a glowing creature in her hands. The girl informs that according to the rule, once you become a chief, you cannot leave the forest, and explains that therefore she must definitely meet her one last time. The guy says he'll take his interlocutor and, in exchange, when he becomes chief, he'll do something for him. He also says that if he does everything, the contract will be concluded. The man responds with a question. The girl says thank you and expresses joy. He stands silently, and the girl hugs him. He says to stop bothering him, it's annoying. The girl asks if anyone is hunting Arima Seto. The girl explains that 2 hero knights. The girl says that if they set up an ambush here, they will definitely be killed, but the man says that won't work. The guy says their mission is to retrieve the Beastman's princess, and warns that if they are killed, war will be inevitable. The girl says that's how it is. Then he calls them idiots. The girl screams that she's behind him, and he explains that they landed in the open. The young man announces that he is using the breath of the fire spirit and releases fireballs, deflecting incoming arrows. He then turns in the air, holding the girl in his arms. Arima Seto says he didn't expect to be hit, and explains that Jake told him not to kill. Jake says he'll check it out, and if the princess is alive, the mission will be accomplished. A guy is standing in the forest, and a hooded man says he didn't hear that the arrogant mage would be her bodyguard. The hooded man says he'll be watching from behind and offers to rely on him. The girl asks Jay if it's possible to kill Arima Seto. The woman laughs. The woman screams. He looks at the girl who jumps with a gun in her hands. A young man punches a girl's spear, which she parries. The young man then parries the girl's attack, after which the hooded man quickly draws 3 daggers. He blocks the girl's attack. The girl says she's bored and asks why he doesn't attack back. She runs at Arima Seto with a gun. The young man says he wants to talk, and the girl asks what they should discuss. The girl explains that they are talking about the criminal who helped the princess escape, or, more precisely, about the kidnapper. The guy suggests taking their time and listening to them. The girl remarks that it's strange that he hasn't done anything yet. The man says he has no intention of antagonizing them. He asks what the man's words mean, then says he'll just kill them whenever he wants. The man replies that, of course, he can. The girl asks Arima Seto what his purpose is, explaining that helping the princess escape requires a legitimate reason. The young man explains that the purpose is so that the princess can meet her friend. The woman says these nights aren't so bad. The man remains silent. Arima Seto explains that these knights aren't so bad and, frankly, they might understand and let them go. He then says that the problem is their stubbornness, but he'll buy time for Rydia to escape into the forest. The girl asks if that's a lie. The man and the girl prepare for battle. First, the sounds of stomping are heard. The girl screams, "Nyav," while delivering a powerful kick to the man's face. The man stands there with a surprised expression. A girl kicks a man in the face. The boy falls to the ground and makes a pain noise. The girl with the ears says that's all they, the underdeveloped ones, can do. Arima Sato screams, "What the hell is this cat doing?" The girl with two-colored hair explains that she doesn't quite understand why her subordinate is lying on the floor and asks. A girl screams, attacking another girl, who responds with a surprised sound. Then the girl with two-colored hair says the mission is unimportant and orders them to just die. The girl with the scythe says that it's time to stop running around in circles. Arima Seto laughs and says that the human's attacks won't hurt him. The girl with the scythe strikes with her sickle, and the girl with ears and a tail jumps out of the tree. The girl screams, noticing a severed finger falling to the ground. The boy explains that this is berserk mode, a release of restrictions intentionally activated by the owner, allowing the scythe to absorb blood, and, once this happens, it's impossible to distinguish friend from foe. The girl says, "Naya." The girl, weapon in hand, prepares to attack. The girl strikes with a spear. He protects the girl, lifting her up and shielding her from the attack. The girl leaps forward with the spear, attacking. The woman laughs and runs forward. The young man explains that Zordi is unstoppable in this form and doesn't want to confront the Order of Knights, but the man tells the girl to leave, calling her a stupid cat, and the girl explains that she has pride too and can't leave. He tells her about the ill-fated chains. The girl hits him with a bat, breaking the chains. He is surprised that she was able to break them, and the girl orders him to die. A woman screams. A man looks at the woman and wonders whose attack it was, perhaps hers. The hooded man watches silently. The girl breathes heavily and says that backup has been sent to them and if they don't hurry, they'll be caught. The hooded man tells them to leave quickly. The man with white hair explains that the goal is to bring the girl home, but the situation has changed. The hooded man confirms that the situation has changed. He says he was able to say it more directly and linearly than he thought, and the man hopes that he will meet his girlfriend. The girl says to apologize. The man remains silent. He tells her that the girl is still ignorant and young, so she will continue to make many mistakes, and as long as she lives, she will inevitably make mistakes, and each time she will suffer terribly. The girl says that she has never made a mistake and shudders. The young man says that as long as you're alive, everything can be fixed. Getting up after falling is what life is about. He explains that all the effort put in will one day. He says that one day he was wondering what certain events would lead to. The girl asks what happened, and he replies that nothing happened. The young man says that this voice is so familiar and that the personality of this body is now inside me. He explains that it's probably his imagination and he won't worry about it. He announces that they are already at the Flower Hill. The girl with the staff prepares for action. Then she destroys a bale of hay that is burning. She looks away. The girl asks who is there. Rachel talks to Arima Seto, who then turns to Rydia. Rachel says she missed her too, and Rydia says she missed her too. Rachel says her name is Rachel and asks for the other person's name. The girl with the ears explains that she doesn't know her own name and that she's just Rachel's partner. Rachel thanks her friend for accompanying her and says that she met not only a friend but also a mage, besides. He asks Rachel what happened and reports hearing a crying voice. The man in glasses is surprised and asks her to wait. He considers the situation bad and wonders if the man knows who he is. He says it's the most incredible book of spells, and the man says it's wonderful. The guy says he can't believe it. He apologizes sincerely and asks to see the real copy at least once, explaining that he's seeing it for the first time. The man says he's giving the book out of pity, to which he thanks him. The man says it's not nice to stand and talk outside and invites him inside. He reports that the book won't open. The girl explains that the book only reveals its contents to the person she chooses. He says he thought he'd finally read one book, but that's not the case. The man remarks that the reception is surprisingly warm. The girl says he'll definitely be chosen someday, and asks him not to be upset. The guy says he'll give up this time. Rydia says she's meeting Arima Seto, the prince of the beastmen, for the first time and has heard that they're running low on magic power, so she brought a secret medicine from the tribe. Arima Seto says it would be very helpful and thanks her for caring for her sworn friend Rachel, noting that. The guy says he's also interested as a mage. The girl says Rydia could be good too, since she's willing to go all the way for it, and the guy explains that his work hours will also be gone. The girl with the ears says the teacher is hopeless, and Arima Seto says that he is what he is. Arima Seto asks if they're finished and suggests they go back, and the girl with the ears is surprised and says they're already going home. The young man says that the student is probably tired from the journey and suggests holding their horses. He explains that they are being pursued, and if they stay, the student could be implicated and become a suspect, so if he cares about the student's well-being, he should leave them alone. The young man asks for a gift. He says the man doesn't understand how valuable it is to give magical tools to someone else, and that his student was depressed about not being able to see her friend, but he brought Rydia and saw her smile again. The man explains that this was the first time he'd touched a real spell book, and that's the least of it. The guy wishes them the best on their trip, and the girl tells them to be healthy and safe. The girl with the ears thanks them, and the guy stands nearby. The girl asks if these are magic rings and not engagement rings. He says it's a magic ring, he feels energy coming from it, and calls the girl a stupid cat. The young man says he'll find out about it after he takes Rydia to the Great Forest, and explains that, unfortunately, he didn't know it was special. He says it's strange, but maybe he's not so happy because he's been traveling alone for a whole month, Rydia asks. The girl says that the man in front of her is a famous wizard, and explains that she was always curious to know how terrible a person he was, but she didn't think he was actually so kind. The man listens to her, silent. The young man says he's kind and asks if the other person really thinks so. The girl asks if something's wrong and notices the guy is crying. The young man calls Lobelio Crowley. In the last panel, a group of people watches the scene unfold. Arima Seto reports that they are surrounded by humans and demi-humans. The man shouts at the princess to come here quickly. The princess tells Lobelio that everything is fine and explains that it's normal that her tribesmen have come here to pick her up personally. The young man says to go. The girl is silent. The girl says that if Jake managed to escape safely and deliver the message, then everything should go smoothly, and it's time to leave. He says they're on the brink of life and death, and because of him, they could die. The man explains that the kidnapping of the demi-human princess is far more serious than anything that has happened before. The young man asks what the other man is talking about. The man says he senses the presence of Zordia and Jake's dark magic, and that the other man is the only one using dark magic. The young man denies any involvement and demands that he be silent. Arima Seto is in pain from a chest wound. A man points a gun at him, and Arima Seto falls to his knees, expressing his pain. A girl calls Arima Seto's name, trying to stop him. The top right text states that this is the headquarters of the Order of Heroic Knights, an underground prison. A man stands behind bars. Arima Seto reports that the cage with shackles limits magical powers, and the barrier prevents escape. The man says that Jake is in such bad shape that he couldn't wake up. The young man explains that if he starts fighting, his reputation will get even worse, and that the hero Reinhard won't listen to his side of the situation because he's his enemy. The young man believes that now everything could end for him. The girl calls Lobelia. The young man looks at. The girl says she heard about what happened to the members of the order and claims it wasn't her doing. She says she believed in Arima Seto and knew that the Lobello who saved her would never commit such a brutal act. The girl asks Arima Seto to wait, as he says it's entirely his problem. The girl says she's still in debt to Arima Seto and just wants to be useful to him. He explains that the only place for Leanne after all this is here. The girl repeats that she just wants to be useful to him. The girl refuses, explaining that she's a princess and promises to help. The guy listens. Arima Seto tells the princess what she's doing here. The princess asks Yugal to wait and explains that she has such deep feelings for Lobelio. The man downstairs says he feels like he's been told some kind of joke. The man reports that the room contains 2 beds, a closet, and a window. The man explains that this is a hospital room. Arima Seto hopes everything will be all right. Elsha says good morning to Reinhard, and Reinhard says the same. Elsha explains that she doesn't deny the theory, but doubting this man without solid evidence seems strange. The guy says that the girl is too kind, and says that the only magician who uses dark magic is Lobelio, and it is definitely him. Arima Seto says he hates it when his friends get hurt and needs to make sure it doesn't happen again. Arima Seto says he has to go, so he'll leave everything to the girl. The girl says, and then looks surprised, saying, the guy announces that he has arrived. The man approaches the stairs. Arima Seto expresses bewilderment. The man says he hasn't heard from Arima Seto in the last couple of months and doesn't know where he's been, but he didn't expect Arima Seto to do something like this to his friends. A guy challenges him to a duel and explains that he wants to deal with him personally. The guy asks why. The guy calls him an idiot and suggests they talk first. The guy is indignant, asking what there is to talk about with someone like him. Arima Seto says he didn't do it. The guy says they have proof, so there's no point in trying to deceive them. The woman tells Lobelio that she never asks him. The man thinks he really wants to fight her. The woman says she'd like to fight him before speaking out, but if he doesn't hold back, it will only anger the others. Arima Seto says that in that case, come what may. The young man reports that a battle with the hero Reinhard is taking place. The image does not contain speech bubbles or text conveying the character's dialogue or monologue. The guy announces that he is ready to fight. The boy screams and strikes Arima Seto with his sword, who parries the attack. The boy screams again and attacks, but Arima Seto warns him to lower his sword as his power is much weaker. The guy refuses. He makes a pained noise as the chains wrap around his body. The guy explains that he didn't hurt the guy's friends, and explains that it was Zordy who did it when she went berserk and Jake tried to stop her, and that's what happened. The guy in chains says he won't believe such nonsense, and Arima Seto says he doesn't want to fight him and suggests asking who else was there. The guy says they are in such a state that they may never wake up again. He shouts at him for trying to run away from his sins and calls him a bastard. He stabs him with his sword. A man speaks of the power of the holy sword. The man strikes, wounding Arima Seto in the shoulder. The man warns not to underestimate him. Arima Seto parries the attack of the screaming boy. Arima Seto strikes back. The boy explains that if Reinhard is a hero who wants to achieve justice, then why shouldn't he try to understand him, and asks why he doesn't believe him. The man says that it's all because of him, and adds, the guy says questioningly, Arima Seto says he's considered a villain just because he's a lobbyist. The man says that's enough and considers it very stupid. The guy says he's about to get what he deserves. The man, woman, and guy watch what's happening. The guy notices a black circle appearing around him. Arima Seto reports that this is due to weakening power. The man with the spear explains the dark spear. The guy says damn and throws a punch. The guy dodges and throws a punch back. Arima Seto says that if he were truly a hero, he wouldn't be falling over right now. A group of people stand in front of Arima, watching him. The guy screams that the bastard can't do that, and the girl says he wants to kill not only their comrades, but also their leader. The guy asks them to step aside, explaining that he doesn't want to deal with them. The insert shows the guy thinking the enemy challenged him to. Arima Seto says that this is their duel, and he was simply counterattacked. He doesn't want to see his loved ones hurt anymore. He explains that if he can't defeat his opponent, everything is pointless, and suggests that they defeat him together, as fighting alone is useless. The girl addresses Arima Seto by name. The guy says, go ahead, and the guy says that victory is his. Arima Seto snaps his fingers. Arima Seto fires a pistol at the man in the cloak. The man in the cloak deflects the arrows with his sword, and the man in the cloak breaks the arrow. The guy explains that he uses the flame spirit breathing technique. Arima Seto says this guy is getting stronger and stronger. The girl explains that it's the plot armor phenomenon, and the man explains that it's the blessing of this sword and the support of his friends. The boy accuses Arima Seto of hurting his comrades and stealing Princess Rydia, then asks if he's making excuses. The boy says he already has an answer and explains that he was simply guarding Rydia as she left the forest to meet an old friend. The boy. Arima Seto says there's no point in explaining. He explains that it's impossible for someone like him to do good deeds. The man says that Arima Seto is no longer his son and that he won't be able to defeat them. Arima Seto kneels. The man explains that this is the true loneliness of the Lobel. The guy says that everyone was rejected like that without even listening to them. The guy asks what? Then the guy punches the guy in the face. Arima Seto says he's great only because he's a hero of justice. Then he explains that he should be hated only because he's a Lobelio, and at that moment he stabs another man. The guy says he wants to live. The man says he wants to live happily and be recognized. Arima Seto says that he too has the right to make someone happy and reminds them that they have a reason to protect others. The man, with a broken face, asks why Arima Seto is crying and expresses bewilderment. Arima Seto looks at the man with tears in her eyes, then clutches her hand. The guy says he can't feel his body and explains that this isn't reincarnation. Then the guy stops the guy's punch by grabbing his arm. Arima Seto is coughing up blood. The man with the wound on his face says that's enough. The man in armor stands before Arima Seto. The guy yells, "Stop!" The girl says it's all over at that moment. The man stands behind the girl. Arima Seto says that the game's main character is Elsha and asks why she is here. The guy announces that the battle is over. The armored man stands in front, the other characters are behind him. The guy says that the battle with Reinhard is over, and he almost got his revenge on him. He says that it's not like the guy since he usually doesn't kill and is not completely confident. Then he explains that they screwed up. The young man says he doesn't understand what's going on. Arima Seto says he didn't steal the princess or beat Zordy and Jake, and everything he said is the absolute truth. The guy demands proof. The young man asks if he's sure. The man, with blood on his lips, confirms that yes, he is. The man says that no matter how hard he tries, no one will believe him. The man, kneeling with blood on his clothes, is called a hypocrite. The woman explains that if Lobelio, who was never truly saved by anyone, chose evil, then why should she do it? And Arima Seto says that he saved them. The woman says that without him, her homeland would continue to be under pressure, and he is undoubtedly her savior. The boy says that at first he didn't believe that Lobelio defeated the dragon faster than him, but the fact remains, people are freed from the old evil, and he trusts this pair. Orimacito begs Jay to wake up and tell him everything, pleading, explaining that Lobelio helped Princess Rydia meet her friend and protected her from Zordi, who was berserking. Orimacito then asks him to stop swinging his sword at an innocent man. Jay screams. The girl says he didn't listen to her and attacked her without evidence and asks them to simply admit they were wrong. The man says it's important to him, Jake, and everyone else. The girl makes a sound that suggests pain or disappointment. He says no one asked him to do this. The man and the girl discuss the situation. The man kneels. Several people gather around the kneeling man. The young man says he doesn't want the girl to worry and asks her not to be afraid. The girl says she can't let him go that easily. A woman treats Arima Seto's arm. The woman asks Arima Seto not to die. Arima Seto says he doesn't want to die anyway and hates bad endings. The girl says he saved someone, and now there are people here who finally understand him, so she asks him not to die Lobelio. The guy listens. The man stands behind them. The girl says you need to live. He says live. The girl and Arima Seto hold hands. He says something in bewilderment, and the girl says that Elsha and Lobelio have disappeared. The man asks what happened and says that Elsha and Lobelio have disappeared. Arima Seto opens her eyes and asks where she is. She explains that when she was near Lobelio, they were suddenly enveloped in a bright light, and now she's here. Arima Seto reports that she can hear the faint sound of wind coming from the other side, and if she finds a way out, she'll probably find out who owned it. The guy asks the girl where she's going. The girl says, ee. Sounds like, The girl asks him not to remind her again about being scared and peeing herself, and Arima Seto says he can't believe she was so scared. The girl asks what Arima did to make the wounds heal so quickly. Arima explains that the wizard gave him a ring with 2 spells. The guy says everything is fine, and the girl apologizes. The girl explains that she heard the wind howling and asks when they can go back. The guy says that they will leave when the storm outside subsides. The guy says that he realized it when he saw A. The upper right text states that this is the spiritual site where the first conflict between humans and demons occurred, lasting over 100 years. The upper left text explains that here, barren lands and anomalous weather are rare, and living creatures were exhausted, with only the strongest races and monsters surviving. He says no one will think he's a kidnapper, and now he's dizzy with the thought of what will happen after this teleportation. The woman explains that Reinhard loves Elsha so much that he will search for her incessantly, but the environment here is harsh and probably no one will. Arima Seto says it's decided and announces a new mission. The guy says that no matter what happens, he must return Elsha safe and sound. The girl expresses bewilderment. He says the weather is so crap and that it looks like the storm last night blew away every cloud there ever was. He then tells Lobelio that if she needs a heat-resistant potion, they're out of it. Lobelio replies to Arima Seto. Elsha says she didn't mean to ask at all, but simply noticed that Tom seems angry every time they cross paths, and wonders why he still has disagreements with Reinhard. Tom explains that he doesn't intend to waste time explaining things, and asks what will change if he. Arima Seto says there's no need to make such a fuss over ordinary bugs, and the girl points out how huge the scorpions are. Arima Seto explains that they just need to use fire magic, since the girl is a sorceress too. The guy releases a stream of fire at the insects. The girl directs fireballs towards the enemies. The guy raises his hand, and a fireball with an insect inside flies towards the girl, who turns back. The girl says she's not tired at all, to which Arima Seto asks if she got tired so quickly. Arima Seto explains that it's not surprising, since this is an unfamiliar battlefield, and says how useless she is, warning that if they do anything out there, they'll get into trouble. The guy says they just met and doesn't think that's the right thing to do. The man orders him to shut up. The guy explains that he hates women who get in his way and make him feel like they're ready to die at any moment, and claims that he's not that weak, even Rain. The woman says she can't understand why the man didn't leave her in the cave if she wasn't transported by his will, and then he had no reason to care about her. She asks if it's because he stood up for her back then. The man remains silent. The woman explains that she did it for Reinhard's sake. He says the girl said she did it for Reinhard, but he was the one who started this whole mess, and asks if she thinks he deserves forgiveness. The girl replies that of course he's just too kind. He notes that she's no better. Dev. Her only problem is that she's blindly in love with Reinhard, and Arima Sato doesn't understand why he likes her so much. Arima Sato says he doesn't care that she stood up for him, and that he won't let her die as long as she's with him. The young man explains that it's disadvantageous for him because if Elsha dies, it will put a big, fat cross on his reputation. And besides, he says he just wants her to spend a happy life with him and for her, as the game's main character, to find happiness. The guy asks. It is said that Reinhard and Elsha met deep in the Forbidden Forest, where Elsha had been sealed for over 1,000 years, after which it is said that Reinhard sympathized with her, thus breaking the seal and marking the beginning of the game's story. In the depths of her soul lies a power that is capable of turning the world upside down and at the same time capable of keeping the world in harmony. If she loses it, the world will simply collapse. He says that so many people are trying to take over her power, so she needs to protect it at any cost. The guy says he's tired of helping everyone and thinks he needs a nap. The woman says Lobelio has no reason to help her and may simply be trying to take advantage of her. The right panel shows a man following footprints on the ground. The girl reports that she didn't see any monsters and hopes she's in a safe zone. She then screams as an explosion occurs nearby. The upper right fragment depicts the moon in the night sky, with water dripping from a hole in the wall. Below is a ruined corridor with fallen stones and a column. In the upper left corner, a girl falls to the floor and says she's in pain. In the lower left corner, a girl with a torch. The woman says the exit is too high to reach and they need to find a way to the surface. She says it's hard, and that even though she managed to escape Lobelio, she feels helpless. The woman says she deeply regrets the nonsense she told Reinhard. He says that we need to get out of here as quickly as possible. Then he explains that we need to run faster, even faster. He asks if there could be anyone here besides him and what just happened. After that, he starts running quickly down the corridor. The girl reports that it is. He says he can't believe she ran away from him while he was napping and scolds himself for not keeping an eye on her. He notices fresh tracks. The young man says that perhaps this is the wrong trail and that the labyrinth was somewhere nearby in the game. He explains that the chances of encountering monsters here are much higher than usual, and Elsha is incapable of fighting, so she might have already been defeated. The young man explains that if the trail crossed paths with the labyrinth's master, the guy says that in that case, you need to go to the boss room and that it's not that difficult anyway. He explains that he's come here many times in the game and then jumps down. The young man says that these creatures and all A rank. He says it's great and says he'll relieve the stress right away. The monsters let out a scream. The young man concentrates his energy in his fist and delivers a powerful blow. He strikes the flying monster, then quickly moves away, surrounded by a stream of energy. He tells you to simply turn towards the boss room. The young man says to turn at this corner. He notices a door and mentions it. Then the young man kicks the door. Below, the young man stands facing a creature with many eyes and a mouth, holding a scroll in its hand. The woman asks for help. He says she's causing a lot of problems. A young man hugs a girl. His hand releases a spark of energy. A powerful explosion occurs at the bottom right. He says they'll have time to talk later. The girl says she's so sorry and says Lolobelio's name. He touches the girl with his finger and she exclaims, "Ah!" A young man strikes a creature with eyeballs. The girl informs Lobelio. Lobelio stands still. The guy says that the rank 5 monster recovers quickly, so it is difficult to fight him in a long battle, and explains that he tried to use Lobelio's dark magic, which can kill the enemy with one blow, but it took too much of his strength. He says he just needs to keep a closer eye on her. The girl explains that she didn't want to cause him problems, die, and have problems with reincarnation again. She says she's so ashamed and asks him to forgive her for causing too many problems. He simply asks. The woman says that she stands out among fools because she is a complete fool and asks if this is clear, to which the man answers in the affirmative. He asks if the woman wants to say anything else, and she thanks Lobelio for saving her. The guy says okay, but don't do it again. The man replies, okay. He tells Elsha that he needs to visit a certain city, even if they have to walk twice as far to get there. Elsha asks which city and clarifies that she's heard of Arcadia, a place under Reinhard's leadership. He confirms that it's Arcadia. Arcadia is located in the northwest near the sea, where the protagonist fought the Demon King. On this harsh continent, many things are in short supply, and maintaining this region is extremely difficult, although it is known that it was entrusted with the management of cities. He says that if you look at the game's scenario, the village is poor due to lack of food, and at the end of the story, Reinhard finds out about this and falls into despair. But since Arima is here, he wants to try to take on this responsibility. The girl asks if it's Arcady, but the young man remains silent. The girl notices something and abruptly jumps aside. The guy with the bow asks who they are and where they came from. He explains that they lost their home during the war and heard they could get help. The girl asks for help, otherwise they will have nowhere to go and will die. He tells the girl that if she wants to make friends, she should do as he does. The man says they must have had a long and difficult journey and offers to show them around. The guy opens the door. He says there are many different people in this city and explains that you can find anything here. The girl says she finds this place very interesting. The man says they should be careful and not attract unnecessary attention. The guy says he can't afford to be weak because weakness is death. The man says he's tired and wants to sleep, and the dog is lying next to him. The woman says she didn't know Arcadia was in such a state. Arima Sato reports that it seems Reinhardt didn't know either. He explains that they usually embellish things when they say everything is fine in Arcadia to deceive people and get rid of unnecessary things, and that society simply doesn't want to help the demons who live there, since they used to be. The girl thanks the villagers for the food and remarks how delicious it is, how much tastier it is than the rats or monsters they've been eating for so long, and that they should thank the villagers for feeding them. The girl explains that it's truly delicious, that she's never eaten anything like it, and asks if it's special. The woman says Lobelio is behind her. He silently looks forward. 3 people outside the window look in with surprise and concern. The young man says what he will do. 3 people are eating, a man, a girl, and him. After the meal, the man thanks them for the food. R says he heard there were new people here, so they came to say hello. Jessica says she's tired of the bland, home-cooked food. Rui apologizes and explains that the ships stopped coming here a few months ago, so it was hard for them to stay. He reports that the situation is much worse than he thought, since no help has arrived for 3 months. The man asks what they think of the hero. The boy calls the hero a hypocrite, the girl a liar, and the other man a villain. The young man says that was a bit harsh. The girl explains that first, the 3 need to be taught how to survive in a cruel world, and that she would like to ensure that the inhabitants of this place can live independently and without the help of heroes. The young man turns to the boys and asks if they want to become stronger, to which the boys are surprised. He says yes. The man with elf ears and the girl also say yes. The girl asks if the young man plans to spend half his life with them. The young man explains that he needs to go to the patrol before it gets dark. The girl says she understands and wants him to be careful. The young man says that he will train everyone anyway, so it's necessary. He reports that the townspeople shared food with them, even though they don't have any themselves, and they need to thank them. He explains that there must be easy prey around here somewhere. A young man stands in front of a huge boar, which is growling and grunting. The young man says it's amazing. Then he makes a sharp motion with his hand, causing a magical effect. He says he's lucky to have found a huge pig so quickly and should bring it back. Then he says that it won't work, but he should at least carry as much as he can. Then he reacts sharply to something. The young man laughs. The horned woman addresses the Dragon King Boros and informs him that she is at his service. He tells them to wait because the Dragon King was afraid of suddenly appearing again. The Dragon King explains that he has no hostile intentions and asks them to remove the Spear of Annihilation. He says he doesn't understand why the Dragon King is still alive. The horned character explains that the illusory gates of hell offered him the choice of becoming Lord Lobelia's faithful servant for the rest of his days, or joining the creatures that dwell within, and states that he has sincerely made the decision to serve under Arima Sato. He says that he plans to stab him in the back as soon as the opportunity arises, but he replies that even after being released, he is obligated to sincerely swear loyalty. The man explains that the dragon race has always followed the strongest and that he is deeply affected by them. The young man tells him to come back. He explains that he doesn't like hearing this from a villainous womanizer and offers to prove his usefulness here and now. The demon asks him to stop and declares that he will prove his usefulness. The demon confirms this with the word aha standing next to the large creature. The elf says that he wants to deliver meat to the residents of Arcadia and will deliver it to the entrance of the city unnoticed. He says that it is good. The woman says she can return to the spellbook at any time and suggests they go. The blonde man says it's a useful opportunity, but there's still a risk of betrayal, so he'll take advantage of it until then. The man in the center asks in surprise, "What is this?" Arima Seto says he doesn't like to just receive, and if anything, he'll be left withered. The man says they're hunting in the Valley of the Bone-Eating and would be glad if you join them. The woman and the man say it's good that Lord Tawari came to them, and the woman adds that the guy says he'd like to go hunting. The man thanks him. The girl asks if she can join them, and the man calls her Mistress Ellie. Ellie explains that Tori taught her a few offensive spells on the way here, and she wants to help in any way she can. Besides, he said it was important to gain experience. He reports that low-level monsters should inhabit the Bone-Eating Valley, and finds it odd that killing Gorgros could have triggered the appearance of monsters in the area. The woman explains that stronger monsters will likely follow, but as long as the mages are with them, everything will be fine. A guy tells people to be careful. A guy fights an animal that attacks him and bites his leg. A guy watches what's happening. A young man informs Mr. Tori that a group of monsters is approaching from the east. Arima Seto says chaos has suddenly broken out and that they need to get everyone out of here first. The man and the young man ask what happened and if they've finished off anyone. The guy tells her to back off. He'll take care of the rest. The man says there's nothing more he can do for Ms. Ellie. Ms. Ellie looks at her hands. The woman tries to help the man with his wound. Arima Seto says that if he can't win, he will die. The guy says that if he can't win, he'll die. Then he tightly grips the hilt of the sword. Arima Seto reports that Elsha is leaving unexpectedly. The guy says to Elsha, turning to her. Elsha cries, clinging to Arima Seto, who hugs her. The guy and Elsha continue hugging. Arima Seto says he no longer sees her as his defenseless heroine because she has changed so much that she was able to endure the hardships of unknown lands with such a fragile body. The girl says she was alone in the labyrinth and couldn't do anything, and also thought that she needed to strive to become stronger. The guy says that others continue to protect him, but Lobelia couldn't help when needed. Lobelia explains that if things continue like this, she won't be able to look the knights in the eye and asks what she should do. The guy calls her by name. Arima Seto squeezes another person's hand and tells them to become someone who can protect others. The guy says he taught men how to hunt and women how to cook. He says that he shared his knowledge with children. Ars tells Jessica and Rule that, in order to fulfill the wishes of orphan children who longed to gain the power to help others, he took them under his wing, taught them, shared their food with them, and mentored them in the art of magic. Ars says he succeeded, and Jessica and Rule say that Ars. Amy says that's great, sighing, and the man asks what she means. The woman says that even though the girl already has someone she likes and is being protected by another guy, her protector, although a little scary, is also handsome, just like in a fairy tale. Arima Seto laughs and asks if the girl thinks Mr. Tori has feelings for her. The guy says that there is definitely a reason why the guy is so protective of the girl and explains that, for example, he likes her. Arima Seto reveals that he can't tell what it was and explains that it wasn't love. The guy says he definitely has feelings for her. The girl says she thinks he's cool, but she doesn't have romantic feelings for him. The guy says the girl always teases him, and Arima Seto asks if that means she's unhappy. The girl explains that's not it. The guy smiles and says that's exactly what he was talking about. The girl asks Arima Seto why he wanted to help these people, and the guy says that there is no need for a reason. He says that people can change if they choose the path of redemption, no matter the gravity of their sins, and they will certainly change. The girl asks if he will be forgiven, to which he replies that who knows. Then the girl apologizes and he asks her not to apologize for. The young man says he is no longer going to hurt anyone or watch others suffer, and if necessary, he will follow the path of redemption throughout his life. He says he wants to walk this path with a girl. The girl asks if it will be okay if she says so, and he replies with a question. What if? He says he can handle it himself, and the girl has friends. The girl agrees, says he's right, and apologizes for saying something stupid. Then the girl says she has things to do tomorrow and she'll go first. He replies that it's fine. He says, just don't tell him that the girl wants to spend the rest of her life with him. The girl thanks him and wishes him good night. The guy says it's nonsense, he just misunderstood. It is reported that another month has passed. He deflects the attack of the girl, who screams and strikes with a sword, after which he grabs her hand. He says it's not that bad. He explains that Elisha's small frame allows her to move nimbly, and her sword strikes are quick, and as he thought, she has more aptitude for fencing than for magic. He reports that in just a few months, she's already become the best in. He announces that the morning workout is over and suggests going to eat, to which the other man agrees. The boy says good morning to the teacher, and the girl says the same to him, Ms. Ellie. The man asks them not to overdo it. The guy announces that he'll be teaching advanced magic today, and finally adds, finally. He explains that he hasn't yet and asks if anyone is planning to blow something up. The guy is surprised and mentions a powerful explosive spell. He explains that he spent the entire morning training the students and the council. The man says he's counting on Tudari to hunt today. The boy says fine, and the boy says he helped out with various chores during the day. The top panel on the right informs him that it's an ordinary day, and perhaps this is the peace he's been dreaming of. In the bottom panel on the right, a man says they've caught another big guy, and he explains that the number of victims has decreased recently and things have gotten calmer. The young man says that everything is going well, and at this rate, he might be able to restore his reputation. The woman tells Mr. Tori that it's in the city. He reports that a few hours ago, there was the port of Arcadia. Two knights inform the woman that the ship of the Order of Heroic Knights has finally arrived with supplies. Arima Sato explains that the spiritual church is a discriminatory organization that hates and persecutes demons, and according to the townspeople, they don't even acknowledge the existence of this place, while the guy says he hasn't seen him in a while and that everyone searched him and that he was unlucky to be sent to the demon continent. The man says he's glad to hear that and understands the situation. The guy says someone helped him, and he's grateful for it, and also that he reports that Reinhard didn't go and asked him, his best friend, to sort things out, and that his presence here would have been problematic. The man says that if it weren't for Mr. Tawdry's help, who knows what would have happened to them, and accuses them of trying to starve them to death. The young man tells the man to shut up and calls him trash. The young man explains to the priest that he asked him to hand over the demons, but he didn't listen, so he's very stupid. The priest agrees and says that the young man is absolutely right. The young man tells the girl not to make a weird face and says, the man states that they have come to cleanse Arcadia of demons, and if there are any idiots who will challenge the righteous cleansing or those who will resist, they will all be destroyed. The guy says there's a devil here. The man says the name Kakoro. The guy says he's a teacher. The boy and girl ask the master to save Ryu and ask if he'll be okay. The guy says he can help. He says that if he dies, no one will be able to stop it. The man explains that he has a medicine that can save his life. The young man says the potion can't revive the dead. The boy calls it a potion. The girl cries. After everything that happened, Arima Sato and his knights searched for survivors throughout the city, but found only 30 people. The young man reports that Elisha has also gone missing and explains that she certainly couldn't have died with her sword skills, and that perhaps she is also looking for survivors. He says that it turns out that the spiritual church and the orders of knight heroes are in cahoots. The man explains that this is why so many demons were killed. He reports that in the original story, Emiet said that poverty came to Arcadia due to a lack of oversight and internal conflicts. The guy says that Reynard trusted his best friend and therefore didn't even doubt it. The young man supports the guy, helping him stand. He says he thought that if he could restore Arcadia, the world would last forever. He explains that everyone had finally found meaning in life and started living happily, but everything was destroyed in a matter of hours. The girl says they're here. The young man says he's glad she's alive. The man asks Mr. Tori what they should do next. He asks what that means. The man explains that Ellie protected them when they were almost killed, but then a blonde man named Elliot showed up and told her to come with him, then he wouldn't hurt them. The guy says that those men took her away. The girl says he lied and almost everyone was killed, but she managed to escape. The girl says that Ellie was simply taken away. He asks if he is doomed to make bad decisions just because he is a villain, and asks if he needs to become like Lobelia to survive. He declares that he has had enough, and explains that for those. The young man laughs and says he was wrong to doubt all this time. The armored man addresses him as Mr. Tori, to which the young man replies that he is not Tori, but the arrogant magician Lobelia Crowley. The top right inset says this is the ship of the Knight Hero Order. Top right, he says Elisha should stop sulking and have some fun. Bottom left, he says today is finally a wonderful day. Elisha is silent. Bottom. The guy says that giving birth to a demon is sinful in itself. The young man makes a noise of displeasure. The young man suddenly headbutts the guy in the face. The guy curses, and the young man punches him. The young man, surprised, says, "Damn it, young man." He says that the girl has completely lost her mind after arriving on the demon continent, and asks when she dared to look at him like that. The young man says that the girl always hid behind Reinhard's back, and now she's pretending to be important, and that he left her alive only for this. He says that he wants to make her his woman. Then he explains that you can say, "Save me, Reinhard," but no one will help anyway. The girl asks him to stop, and the guy reacts with surprise. The woman asks Lobelia to save her. The guy says that this is the name. He reports hearing a sound. On the deck of the ship, a group of hooded people stand together, not speaking. The man announces that, from now on, the guy says this is the beginning of hell. He says it's the arrogant mage Lobelia. The man shouts, "Quickly create a barrier." Several characters shout, "Ah, ah, 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 ah." The man says, "These are monsters." Another man says, "A priest, they're trapped." The man orders protection. He shouts at his opponent to fight. The opponent swings his sword, but he raises his hand and creates a magical barrier that stops the blow. The opponent is surprised by the magical barrier's appearance and screams in pain as he strikes him in the face. The man screams and calls for Mr. Elliot. He says he will not run away. He then hits the man hard, causing several other men to be injured by the spears. A man asks to be saved and turns to the Lord. A young man stands opposite and listens. The man tells them that the god they worship is worthless and will make them experience the suffering they caused Arcadia. He asks if Elisha is somewhere inside, then notices that it is the only room with an open door. The young man uses magic. Lobelia says, "Ah," and turns to Elisha, noticing the bruise. The young man reports Elisha's bruise. He says that it's true, and no wonder she trembles with fear at the sight of blood on his hands, and tells her that now he looks like a villain. The girl silently clutches her chest. The girl says she believed and was sure the young man would come. The young man explains that it's foolish to believe in someone like him. He asks the girl to drink a restoration potion before returning to the others, saying he's never seen such a potion before and that its color is strange. He says the girl should just drink when he says drink. The girl says she understands. The young man explains that the potion acts as a sleeping pill, and he can't let Elisha see the horror outside. Elisha says the taste is a bit bitter. The man asks how they're doing, to which the woman replies that the enemies have been destroyed, but they can't find ours. He informs him that among his students, ours has the greatest mastery of advanced magic, and stubbornly insisted that she wanted to avenge Rui, so he agreed, but it seems he made a mistake by taking him along. The guy says that. The guy reports that there are still enemies on the ship, and asks about the explosion. The young man says he has no more room for error, and orders everyone to get ready. The boy orders them to leave and return to the boat, but the man is indignant and asks, "What about them?" explaining that he'll deal with the remaining enemies and find ours. The boy repeats that this is an order to leave. Then he says that after such an explosion, the ship won't last long. The guy says it was risky, but it worked. Then he makes the C sound. A young man reports that Roberia, ours' apprentice, is in danger. Roberia tells the master. Translator Cosmic Lee, Cleaner Salem, and Typer Salem share a small off-topic thread, explaining that in anime, the church is always portrayed as the villain, even though demons were originally shown doing bad things. Then the Templars arrived, having seen all sorts of things, and decided the city was overrun. The guy asks how those bastards from Arcadia got a protector like him. The guy asks to let him go. The guy explains that it means the kids are looking after him and says that Elisha recently called his name, asking if something happened between them while she was. The young man says that if you're going to kill someone, then kill him. He's not afraid, and even if he dies here, the teacher will avenge Rue and the others. The young man orders him to close his mouth. Then the young man uses the laundry bond spell. A guy frees a guy tied up with ropes and chains. The guy is surprised. The guy throws the guy down from a high place. The guy notices that they've switched places and asks if this is the ability of Arima Seto's sacred weapon. He says ours, then says that, thank God he is alive. The guy says he didn't have time to break the chains, and explains that he has the best medicine that should stop the harmful effects of black magic. He also asks if the man is the girl's friend from the demon clan, and says that he is a human, yet he's talking such nonsense. He says he's sick of people like his interlocutor, and that he seems completely out of his mind. He explains that he should imagine what it's like to see damned demons tormenting family and friends before his eyes, to endure the bitterness and pain of being tortured, and he says not to dare speak to him arrogantly. He explains that ours needs to be separated from him. The boy says he doesn't understand why someone like Lobelia, a proud and arrogant bastard, would fight for others. The young man says he doesn't care what a scumbag like him thinks. The boy explains that he definitely won't give in to such a moron. Then, Arima S. He reveals that Elliot was also betrayed by demons in the past, just like Lobel, and it turns out they were both villains consumed by a thirst for revenge. He explains that this bastard hurt Rui and his friends, and says he can't back down now. He reveals that the sacred weapon, Grady Switch, has the ability to swap its wielder with a chosen target. He explains that black magic can destroy the remaining enemies inside the ship, but has a long recharge time and a limited range. He explains that in order to create a portal capable of, the young man tells him that his opponent's death will not be easy and painless. He makes him feel the fear of death and pain. He says he is pleased. He reports that Mrs. Ellie has woken up. Mrs. Ellie tells Mr. Yuma that Lobelia is asking where Tori is. The young man says he's still on the ship. The girl says they need to go back, but the young man replies that it's impossible. The girl exclaims, "Ah!" He tells her that Mr. Lobelia wants them to be safe, and even if they returned, they would simply be trapped and die. The woman says they would want that too, but the boy explains that it can't be any other way. The young man says he has no intention of giving up, and says his sword is his strength and honor. He explains that he will fight until his last breath and asks not to underestimate his resolve. He says that this bastard is still so overconfident. He explains that even if he wins, there is no way out and the ship will still sink, and asks if he is being overconfident or if he really has something planned. He says that he will end everything with one blow and orders them to get ready. The guy explains that the weaker the dog, the louder the bark, and that the outcome is obvious. He then begins to create fire magic in his hand, and the other guy screams and attacks him. He coughs and screams. A man on his knees calls out to Nogiri. The man in the cloak utters a curse word. He asks for the torture to stop and says he understands. The man in the cloak screams no. A woman in a nun's habit sits on the floor, sparks flying around her. The guy explains how he ended up here. The man calls Arima Seto an arrogant magician. Arima Seto reports that Elliot used his ability, and it turns out someone outside could have switched places with him. He explains that he only hesitated for a moment, and Elliot took advantage of it and asks if he was unconsciously sympathizing with him. The young man says, "Damn, Elliot," and Elliot says he was just on a boat. The priest says that since that's the case, anything is possible, and asks Arima Seto to save him. Arima Seto responds with a question. The priest explains that if he is saved, the spiritual church will fully support Arcadia, and reveals that Elliot actually forced them to do so, asking for help. The guy says it's clear. The man says they're being generous, and he'll never forget this debt as long as he lives. The guy explains that the legendary gates of hell will activate soon, and he's wasted too much time. He apologizes for keeping you waiting and says that we need to get out of here. A young man talks about what happens when he's not finished off with one punch, while also saying he thinks someone is a fool. Arima Seto says he'll inform Reinhardt and they'll attack with the full force of the Knight's Order. This time, he'll destroy all the demons and those who support them. The man says, well, and notes that Arima Seto has no remorse. The young man shouts out who he is. Boros explains that he is the arrogant mage's direct subordinate and the Dragon King. The young man is surprised that it is the Dragon King who supposedly defeated Lebelius. Boros explains that his master ordered him not to show himself in public, and the woman explains that she will first remove the man's skin piece by piece. The man reacts tensely to her words. A man shouts a curse and reaches out to a glowing portal.